I'm a normal functioning kid doing just day-to-day activities, and then all of a sudden they tell you that you have a brain tumor. I literally played in a rugby tournament the day before my incident. I don't know how this is possible.
This is the Man Up Podcast, a doctor's guide to men's health. Each week on our podcast, we interview the top specialists of the field on various topics in men's health. If you have questions that you are too afraid to ask, we have the answers. This week, our episode is titled POV, Perspective Series, interviewing a brain tumor survivor. My name is Dr. Kevin Chu, and I'm joined as always with my co-host, Dr. Justin Dubin. Justin, I'm really glad we brought back the Perspective Series.
Yeah, it's always a really great series that we have. We bring in some people who went through some stuff that is often hard to talk about. And this week we're joined by Zach Round, who suffered from a brain tumor, and his story is a pretty remarkable one. I mean, this is a guy who is very young, very active, and despite, as you're going to find out, a lot of obstacles, he ended up playing college football. He ended up, really being able to not dirt bike, mountain bike, and do things that I would say most people who have significant brain surgeries probably should not be able to do. So it's a really, really inspiring story, really cool story about someone who, defied the odds and said, not today. I'm going to keep living my best life.
Absolutely. The whole part of him, he's going to go into detail about the journey that he went through, diagnosis, finding out, his feelings when he was in the hospital. And then towards the end of the journey, we're hearing about him playing football. It was astounding, inspiring, amazing. And that's, Justin and I got into medicine because it's, the way it is with human life, the humanity aspect of it. So it was a beautiful story. I'm so glad that we're going to be able to share this journey with all our listeners.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it highlights the need as men to talk about our problems, right? The reason why we have this podcast is because of the men's health stigma. We don't want to talk about our problems. We don't want to highlight the issues that we have. We always give kudos to the people who come on and share their experiences. And if you are interested in certain surgeries, procedures, or hearing about people with, things like prostate cancer, we do have some really wonderful perspective series that we welcome you to go back to and listen to. And I have found that a lot of people have reached out over the years and said that they found them quite helpful. And I think that this one's going to be a valuable one in the collection of our POV series. But yeah, we also welcome if you're listening and you're going through something, or you're going through something that you think that you want to tell other people to inspire them. We welcome you to reach out to us for sure, through our emails, through our socials is often how we get reached out to. But even if you don't want to talk about it, if you're going through it, make sure you talk to someone, talk to your doctor. And a lot of these things and a lot of the stories that we tell, you know, the man really manned up by going to get help, and that's kind of really what's going on here.
It's amazing how one's medical journey, how everything that they go through and they share, the impact it can have on so many others as they're listening to it, especially if they're going through the same thing. And so it really helps out with some of the fears that you may have, some of the stigmas that you may be so afraid of saying, like, oh, look, I've got this issue. Well, guess what? It's maybe not as uncommon as you think it is. And people are going on that same journey. So it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. So I think with that, I think we should get into Zach's story. I want to give Zach Round a shout out. You can find him on his social. It is Tumor Warrior 67, I believe, on Instagram. He has a website as well. So it's Tumor Warrior 67.com. So that shout out to Zach. We'll probably collab with him on the socials, so you can follow him there, and he's going to continue to educate and inspire people on his journey. So I want to thank him once again, and let's get into it, Kev.
Sounds good.
So today we are very honored to be joined by Zach Round. Zach has very graciously joined our podcast to kind of share the medical journey
that he's been on. It's truly a really remarkable story. So we're really happy to have you on, Zach, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be here.
So, while we get started, let's just jump kind of right into that conversation. So, can you share the start of your medical journey with us, and kind of how you found out about your diagnosis?
Yeah, the start of my journey is actually very different to most journeys. It was more of a blessing in disguise than it was. I had symptoms. I was very asymptomatic before everything. So I was on a mountain bike ride with a couple of buddies out in San Clemente, which is a local trail network of mine. And when I was out there, for some reason, I decided to hit a road gap. Now, I've gone back to where all this happened, and I look at that road and I'm just like, why in the world did I ever do this? Why did I hit this? It's absurdly massive. I was like, something must have been going through my mind.
Hey, man, to be young and dumb, you know what I mean?
Live
Exactly.
invincible, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, I was out there and I decided to hit the road gap. I didn't make the road gap, obviously, as the road gap was at the start of my whole journey. So when I didn't make it, I landed straight on my head and I was deemed as unconscious. I'm not sure. I have the GoPro video of me kind of like exhaling after you get the wind knocked out of yourself, where it's like, ugh,
Right.
like you let out that big grunt. So there was that coming out, and it could have been from either me getting knocked out or me having the wind knocked out of myself. And also, I don't remember anything that happened during that part. But right at the end, after the crash, there were a bunch of bikers around me, and we had a long conversation and got to the consensus of you need to be airlifted because it was getting late. I was in a bad spot. I was under power lines. Everything just wasn't, going the right way. So that's when I decided. I was like, all right, you know what? I'll get airlifted. I'm pretty sure I'm fine, but whatever. I'll get airlifted. So I went to the hospital via helicopter, and the when I arrived there, it was for all airlift patients. They are deemed as trauma patients for their trauma bay,
Right.
and I was placed under trauma protocol, and they gave me a head to toe CT scan.
Cut off your clothing, they do all that stuff.
Oh yes, yeah, they cut off my clothing. So actually, fun fact about that, I was wearing a brand new riding kit that I got for Christmas that was worth about
No.
$200, and it was my first
Oh.
ride in that kit, and they had to cut it off. So that was a bit of a bummer, but it was a small price to pay for what's to come. And the full body CT scan they gave me, it revealed a mass that was in my brain, and they ordered an MRI to like see what that actually was, and that's when the brain tumor was confirmed, and it was the size of a golf ball.
Mm.
That's absolutely crazy. You know, what we do, we call that in medicine is an incidental loma.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, you get a CAT scan, you get some imaging for one thing and you find another thing. We often see that a lot for kidney masses in the world of where Kevin and I, are in urology. A lot of kidney masses are found as incidental lomas. But so you're in a situation where you have a bike accident where you think it's one thing, you come out finding it's another thing. You're told you have a brain tumor. What's going through your mind at this exact point? How are you feeling?
It was so surreal. Everything was so surreal because I was asymptomatic. I'm a normal functioning kid, and I'm doing just day-to-day activities, and then all of a sudden they tell you that you have a brain tumor. It's very hard to get your mind to wrap around this. And I was just I'm thinking, I'm like, I have a brain tumor. Like, how is this possible? I literally played in a rugby tournament the day before my incident,
Right.
and I was scoring tries, and I was doing everything normally. So it's like how can this brain tumor the size of a golf ball be in my brain? How can it affect me? I have no symptoms. I'm clear, I'm good. I don't know how this is possible. So it was a very surreal time. It yeah.
I will say in medicine, Justin and I, we see it a little bit more often, right? Because we treat patients.
Mhm.
But I can only imagine, from the other side, Zach, what you went through, that exactly as you said, you don't think about how, like, hey, there's something going on that is actually really bad and could be really harmful, such as like cancer going on, right? Especially at your age, that when you were dealing with this, you have this air of invincibility that life goes on forever.
Mhm.
Justin, I don't know if you ever felt that way when you were going, high school, college. You're just like,
Still
life
now.
just seems like it's right. And so, what you went through is just, it's it with the gravity and this, the seriousness of it, at your age is just is remarkable. So these doctors are probably coming in at this point when they see this mass, and when they've kind of told you about it. What are they telling you about, like, prognosis, future expectations at this point?
Initially, there were no future expectations. I was actually looking over that specific question yesterday because that was one that hung me up. And when I really thought about it, they didn't give me any future expectations after the first surgery. I feel they were planning for me to die, and there was just no future talk at all. They were just telling me how, how serious it was. Um, and the pediatrician who actually had to break the news to me was the worst person to break the news to me. He had no clue how to tell me. What I remember from the conversation was basically he told me to get my life affairs straight and that I'm going to die. You probably have a 1 in 10 chance of living. And that is
Jeez.
really what sent me into like a spiral. I was just like, like that's really what caught me off guard. I was just like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? And the future expectations really didn't happen until after the first surgery where I survived and the doctors were kind of just like looking at each other just like what do we do now? Like we got to prepare this kid, for the future. We didn't think he'd get that far or something, but it it was kind of very low for the future expectations, but it, it just happened to come out that way.
No, and listen, I'm sorry you went through that counseling. We don't wish that upon any of our patients or
Mhm.
any one of our friends. And obviously, in a situation where we just said you were, in a very fragile situation where you just found out about this, you have no idea really what's going on. With regards to how that was handled, obviously, I don't really can't condone how that was done. But I do think it's fair when setting future expectations. Sometimes you don't mention those things because sometimes you don't know what it is. Oftentimes when we don't have a tissue diagnosis, as we'll come to understand, we don't know what it is. Sometimes things are benign, sometimes things are cancerous, sometimes there's a mix of potential to be cancer still, and we don't know until we're in, and it's unfair to give future prognoses or expectations until the surgery is done.
Mhm.
Now, you complete that surgery. Tell us how long it was, and then you're recovering after surgery. What do they find, and then what's your recovery going? What's going on with your recovery
Oh
at that point?
gosh, yeah, the recovery process was just so long. And what me and my family said was it was two steps forward, one step back. Because initially, after the first surgery, I got bacterial meningitis. That led to hydrocephalus. And down the road, it eventually leads to kidney stones. I had weight loss problems. I couldn't keep any food down. They had to give me steroids. So I went down in weight, ballooned up in weight. It was just a whole shit show of medical problems, one after the other. So the first problem started with the bacterial meningitis. It started with a few surgeries to figure out.
Incredibly dangerous.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Dangerous, very dangerous.
mhm,
People die with bacterial meningitis all the time.
yeah, and the problem was the bacterial meningitis was in my brain. So the brain is the infectious disease. The head of infectious disease described to me the brain is kind of like a fort, like it's very hard to get into and very hard to get
Hmm.
out of.
Mhm.
So they need
Blood-brain
something.
barrier.
Yeah, so they need something in order to penetrate the brain barrier, but not strong enough to where it'll kill your brain. So they had a fine line of dancing, and fortunately enough for me, they had a few medication options because the first one did not work. I was on a medication called mirapenem that had a side effect of kidney stones, and I was on a kind of a high protein diet because I was an athlete at the time. And well, I still am an athlete. I'm talking like I'm retired or something, but no, I still am an athlete. I still do my athletic stuff, but the high protein diet mixed with that medication led to kidney stones, and it also led to the bacterial meningitis coming back. So what happened was initially after the first
Mhm.
surgery, so bacterial meningitis, and then I go back into the hospital. I have like three, I think it was, yeah, it was three surgeries trying to get the bacterial meningitis to kind of subside, kind of, help out the hydrocephalus as well. And we thought that worked. So they sent me home. I thought I was on the road to recovery. Turns out I wasn't. I then go back into the hospital. My right kidney is in renal failure. My left kidney is on the
Hmm.
brink of renal failure. And I get emergency surgery for my kidneys. And then I have the brain problem come back. So I had to go back into the brain stuff. It was, it's a whirlwind and it's a lot of
Sorry.
information. But I had about 6 surgeries. The
Mm.
third time I was in, because I was in initially for the resection, then I was in for bacterial meningitis, and then it came back. So the third time I had about 6 surgeries, and we had to figure out the kidney functions. We had to figure out the brain and the bacterial meningitis, so it came back stronger, and it was just a terrible, terrible time. But I was able to plug away and push through it. So I got done and out of that all in about 5 months. So from January 2017 to early June of 2017, that was when 10 surgeries happened and all
Jeez.
of the medical stuff really happened. And then after that, it was just kind of like a trickle effect where I had, a surgery like every other month, and then I had to go back in later, the following year for other things, and that was the brunt of what went on. So after that, it was May 31st where I had my 10th surgery, and that was to like remove all of my stuff. So they had to remove my stent. They had to like finish cleaning up my kidney a little bit. They removed my PICC line. They removed my catheter, and I was basically tube free after that, and I was good. And then August comes around, and I'm having problems in the morning, and I don't know what it was. So it turns out one of the surgeries I had prior was a radiation treatment, and that caused my uh, the area where my tumor was to calcify and kind of create a cyst because my
Wow.
body overreacted to it. So that was causing my brain to have pressure. I also had double vision in the first surgery, so I needed a surgery to undo my double vision, which that was one of my surgeries.
Jesus, man.
Yeah, and then
So here, just like so tell so I mean, so in total, how many surgeries did you have?
17.
17 surgeries in the
17.
span of how long is this?
Well, that's the span of October of 2023 to January 2017. But from January 2017 to January 2018, I had 13. So that
Holy
was that
shit,
was my
dude.
initial. And then, so January 2018 came. We had to do another craniotomy, which is open brain surgery, basically. And they had to drain the cyst and like release the pressure that was in my brain. And then I didn't really have a surgery till the following year. That was
Hmm.
because of surgery 13. My was paralyzed. The right side of my face got paralyzed in that
Oh,
surgery. So in that surgery, or not in the surgery, sorry. So since the right side of my face was paralyzed, we found someone who could do facial reconstruction surgery. His name is Dr. Babek Azizadeh. He's in Beverly Hills. Oh gosh, I'm
Shout out to him.
yeah. Shout out to him. I'm messing up my words. Sorry.
yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
But yeah.
But
So
Zach, let me ask you just real quickly. You're just going through surgery after surgery, and one thing I'll point out to our listeners, Zach came in, and it was an initial diagnosis of a brain tumor, but as much of medicine really does affect the whole body, which Justin and I see all the time.
Hmm.
Like you're
I
taking medications that can affect the kidney, just like Zach talked about. And so, he's going through one thing, and next thing you're like, oh, you got kidney issues. You're like, well, I thought we were dealing with just, things going on in the brain, and now there's a kidney issue. And so, our bodies are really intricately linked together. So, Zach, you've been going through all these different things. How do you maintain like hope and positivity really throughout your treatment? You're just going through like, as you said, two steps forward, a couple steps back kind of situation.
yeah, maintaining hope was kind of a difficult thing in that hospital. It was a very dark place, but I will tell you, I I did find hope in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I definitely found hope through him. I followed him. I was following him before, but I was kind of going through the motions. I was at a Catholic high school, but I was just going through the motions. I didn't really care about it, and then this whole journey just kind of brought me to him and made me realize how good he is and what he does in times of need that you have. And the hope really just came through him. It also came through me just kind of looking back on what I already went through. Like, I already went through my initial surgery. What is one more? I already went through two surgeries. What's the third one? And I just kept stacking, you know, I went through this. What's the next thing? And once I started stacking and stacking and stacking, I eventually got through 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years, and it just started working and working and working, and that's when I found the strength of me, and that's when just everything started going good for me.
That is really wonderful. I think that's a really insightful way of looking. Obviously, your appreciation for a higher power is really special,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of people find something in these moments. But I do also really want to give you credit for how you approached it, where
Yeah.
let's stack them up, line them up, let's knock them down, let's keep going,
Keep
and
going.
keep going. And I think there's the saying, when going through hell, keep going. And it sounds like, you kept a very positive attitude even in the darkest of times. So I really do want to give you credit. And I think that's what you have gone through. You don't wish your worst enemy to go
Hmm.
through. So, I guess the next question I have for you is, what was, the turning point for you throughout this recovery process? Was there a specific turning point that you remember, like, hey, we're getting out of this, the grass, I can kind of see the end of the light here, of the tunnel. I think we're getting where we want to be, and the worst is over.
Yeah, that's another difficult question that I've really had to reflect on. And when I'm looking back, it really was after the first surgery where I think of it, where when you just like when you just right now, like you mentioned the light at the end of the tunnel. I think the first surgery was kind of the turning point at that point, because once I got through that first surgery, it's kind of like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. You made it through that difficulty, And that's when that turning point just kind of turned into you won. Like you won during that first surgery. Let's win again. Let's win again. Let's win again.
Yeah.
And just keep winning and winning and winning. And once you start winning so much, you just get so much stronger. You're just like, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And just keep pounding away. And that's all it really is. And that mentality also it comes from being a football player. Just pounding away at something. Just keep break my sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but my old coach, he used to tell us, keep pounding that rock, keep breaking that rock, because
Yeah.
that's how you break rock. That's how water can break rocks. Like at first you don't see anything, but after a while, after it pounds away at it, you start to see a formation in that rock. So just keep pounding away, keep grinding, and like you'll see the light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that mindset. I love that perspective. I'm going to definitely share that with my patients
Thank you.
who are going through themselves,
Hmm.
whether it be a cancer diagnosis or something difficult, medically. Now, Zach, what role did your support system play in your recovery?
Oh, they played a huge role, a very, very big role. My support system, uh, they're amazing. My parents mostly, they're just absolutely amazing. Of course, the medical staff, they were awesome. I love my doctor. Shout out my neurosurgeon, Dr. William Loudon. He's one of the greatest neurosurgeons, in my humble opinion. But I mean,
Shout out.
it's a biased opinion. Um, but yeah, he's a great neurosurgeon. But my family, my parents, they would have a thing where my mom would come in the day, my dad would go home and do his thing, and then my dad would stay at night and help out there because one of the reasons that my dad wanted the night shift was because he didn't trust anyone to move me around. I'm 6 foot, 220 pounds, and I was about 6 foot, 220 in the hospital, and it was a pediatric hospital. So a lot of the nurses and a lot of the things were not made for someone of my size. So
Right.
Right.
that was one of the reasons my dad stayed there, was because he knew he could move me around if he really wanted to. So he trusted himself more to kind of jockey me around and get me around. And he not to say he didn't trust my mom, but he'd rather him do it than my mom do it and get hurt. And that was one of the great things about it. But yeah, so every morning at about 8:30, I'd call my mom. She'd be coming with like either Krispy Kreme or Starbucks because that was what I was
Nice.
craving, I guess.
Hell yeah, dude.
Now that I look back on it, those are probably two of the most unhealthy things to have once you have cancer because they're chock full of
Dude, you
sugar.
deserved it though. You deserved
You're
it, dude.
Yeah,
recovering. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. But
You,
they're chock full of sugar, and sugar is the enemy for us. But they were just amazing. My mom, she'd always come around 8. My dad would always come around dinner time, and they'd switch off. We'd have a system. I'd have very few visitors because I was in the ICU. Not a lot of visitors are
yeah,
allowed up there.
Hmm.
very difficult. Yeah.
But my nurses, they were gracious enough. They were like, I mean, you're able to kind of walk around and function a little bit. We'll let you go down to the cafeteria, meet some people, and I know they're not allowed to, so shh, But but yeah, they were great. They kind of gave me a little bit of free reign because I was such a high functioning patient for the ICU, but yet I still had things that were going on. I had tubes in my head and stuff that I had to be careful with, but they still let me go out.
that's pretty cool. And obviously, your support system is always going to be a big part of your recovery and your journey. I want to go a little bit ahead. So, you recovered, and I'm going to ask this question because the next question is going to be about your activities after, which is obviously incredibly inspiring, which we really want to highlight here is, so when all is said and done, you're done with your last surgery. What physical deficiencies, if any, do you have from the whole experience?
The physical deficiencies that I have is the right side of my body. It it's weaker. The balance and coordination is off because my brain tumor was in the cerebellum, which is the center of balance and coordination. So my balance and
Right.
coordination is off, just in general. Like my equilibrium, it's off. Like nothing really will be 100% after it. I will, first and foremost, I will never fully recover from what I went through. I'm always going to be on the recovery. I'm always going to be on the mend of things. And I can only get to about, I'd say about 90, 95% of what I was originally. There still is a part of me gone. But the physical aspect will be my eyes. My eyes are in double vision. I have permanent double vision. There is no way to fix that. I've had multiple conversations with my neuro ophthalmologist about this, and there's just they can speculate something to where like, oh, we can align them, but we can't tell them to work together. You can't tell nerves what to do. You kind of just got to let them run their course and do their thing. And that's one of the things that I've learned with nerves is just let them be, let them do their thing. So the right side of my body, it's very not the right side. My body is just not really good at balance. Specifically the right side, as I should say. The right side of my face is paralyzed, but I've had some facial reconstruction surgeries. That was surgery 14 and 15 that helped me with it. And I do have some patches on my body to where I have no feeling in them at all. So that would also be kind of areas of like physical, like, what's the word I'm trying to say? Abnormalities? Uh,
I guess like just yeah, I mean just yeah, I guess that's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. So, I mean, obviously this is a lot. It's a lot for anyone to
Hmm.
deal with. And as a younger kid, I mean, how old were you again when you were when you
I
found
was
that all this was done?
I was 17 years old. So
So you were 17.
yeah.
By the end of it, how old were you when you say you were kind of like ready to take the next step of your life?
I mean, I'm still kind of going through it a little bit.
Of
I
course,
mean,
right.
but really the last surgery I had last year in October, so October of 2023, I was 24 years old and that was my last surgery, but I really would say the last the last hard part was January of 2018, so when I was 18 years old. It was all a very quick process, but like that's one of the reasons that my mindset is kind of just I'm kind of wrapping my brain around it is because it all happened so quickly.
Yeah,
All 13 surgeries happened within 364 days of each other. So that's actually a funny
it's
thing.
crazy.
Yeah, so I planned my 13th surgery on January 16th or January 15th of 2018 just so I can say, "Oh, I did it all in 364 days." I averaged
Yeah,
a
I
Love
mean
it.
little
that's
bit more than
Love
one
it.
surgery a month.
yeah, dude. Yeah.
So Zach, but look, you just talked about it. You had some you have some residual right-sided weakness. You have some double vision.
Mhm.
It you're on the road to recovery. Some guys would just focus on just recovering, right? You're just like, look, I'm happy I made it out. Like, just gonna take it easy, just kind of focus. But you did some things differently, right? You ended up playing college football.
Mhm.
Like, at
That's
what
correct.
point did you decide? That's
It's
remarkable,
pretty
right?
Mhm.
unbelievable,
Yeah,
That's
dude.
thank you.
unbelievable. And so, what point you decide you were doing it? Like, what challenge? I mean, you're sure you're going to share with us some of the challenges that you had to overcome to play college football with some of these kind of issues post, surgery.
Yeah, 100%. There were definitely a lot of challenges, but there was a turning point in the hospital where I was like, life moves too fast to where like it's going to matter. And if I wait for myself to become fully recovered or close to fully recovered to go play football, I'm going to be 30 years old. There's no way
Right.
that I can play college football, play high school football, and still be recovered. So I'm going to have to do this still recovering. And that was kind of just like, you know what? Like that's when it flipped a switch and I was like, "Hey, this is go time. I'm going. Like 4 workouts a day, like no recovery time. Just go, go, go. Like just keep grinding, keep going after it and keep
Badass,
getting after
man.
it." And
Yes.
that's how it was for me. It's not the best way, as you guys are doctors and I said no recovery time. You guys are probably like, you probably should recover, but that's how it was for me. Like it was 4 workouts Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday I'd do 2 workouts. And the recovery time was basically the time off my feet, and that was when I was sleeping. And I got 8 hours of sleep. I went to high school. I got 4 workouts in a day, meant which meant that it was a very lonely time for me. So I didn't really, talk to a lot of people at that time, but it was so I could be what I am today. So I can be out there and inspire others and talk to other people and help them go through that cancer process, that brain tumor process. And, if they have double vision or, like whatever, and I can help them get through it. So all of it was very quick, and I was just kind of like, all right, I've got to go and do this. But it was for a purpose that I have later on, which is that, well, which I'll talk about later on. And yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, tell us, what position did you play in college? And, was it different? And how did you overcome some of the balance issues, some of the double vision and stuff?
Yes, I played offensive guard. I was on the offensive line, so I was one of the big men up there. I weighed about 255 pounds. My
God
Mm,
damn, dude.
Yeah, in my good
beast.
years, I was 6 foot, 255. Actually, I think the heaviest I weighed in was 265. That was kind of like an unhealthy weight, though. I didn't really enjoy it. But I find it most effective when you're about 250 to where you're just hard enough to move, but if you're quick, like it doesn't matter. And that's kind of like how I like playing, is being kind of on the lighter side but being quick. And that's where I was at. It was definitely a big effect on me, and it was definitely a different effect for those around me. I didn't have the best college experience playing college football, which it was unfortunate, and I'm sad about it. But I've also got to look back and think, like, no one went through and no one has seen what I've like no one has seen what's going on. So they had no idea how to
100%.
handle it.
100%.
Yeah. So they're most of the kids are there and they're just like, "Yeah, I'm playing college football." And then all of a sudden, they get a brain tumor survivor who's had, at the time it was 15 surgeries, show up with double vision, right side
Ugh.
facial paralysis, balance problems, and they're just like, what is this dude? Like, who is this guy?"
And then you pancake them, and then they're like, "God damn, what the fuck is going on?"
Yeah, exactly. But it was different. It was different for the players. I was kind of, like alienated a little bit because they were just like, "Whoa, like what is this kid? Like I've never seen this kind of person before." And then I was also kind of singled out by the coaches because as much of it being an inspirational story, they also didn't want all the negativity like put on them and taking responsibility if I get hurt on the field. If they put me out there and I get
Right,
hurt, like
right. Interesting.
who's it going to look bad on? It's going to look bad on them. I mean, but at the end of the day, I made the choice to go out there. So it was kind of just like everyone's seeing this for the first time. They're just like, what do I make out of this? How do I, do this? Like, so,
But look,
um,
Zach, you didn't even stop
yeah.
there, though, right? So you took this college football challenge, you did it. You're an offensive
Hmm.
lineman, but you're also into mountain biking, right? That's
That
something
is
that
correct.
you're
Yes.
incredibly passionate about. And that, that requires, look, again, let's rehash double vision. You had some residual like neuro, weakness.
Balance
Mountain
issues.
biking would not have been something I guessed, right,
Yeah.
Justin?
No,
Yeah.
no.
100%.
So, why'd you pick mountain biking, or was that something you've always been passionate about?
That's something I've always been passionate about. I started mountain biking when I was 5 years old, and it started out just taking little fire roads with my dad on the Alley Cat, which is a bike extension back then, but now they probably have other things. But we don't really look at them because I'm grown, he's grown, and there's not really a need for it. But it started out with that extension thing, and then it started with me getting just like a Walmart bike, and then it started with me getting a better Walmart bike, and then I got a real bike, and then it just I got better and better and better, and I got a better bike, and I started riding with my friends. It got serious, and then I had the brain tumor, obviously, and then I got back on the bike, and I realized not only I want a mountain bike, but I also realized what the health benefits that mountain biking has for me.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So it was just a good way to put that into my recovery. So mountain biking became part of my recovery as well as a leisure sport for me. And it's just something I've always been passionate about.
Awesome, man. I
Yeah.
mean, it's pretty badass. I know you have your videos online, so I think it's really cool. You share your content, which is how we all found each other.
Hmm.
But I want to thank you for sharing your story, and before we start really wrapping things up, I do want to ask you, in this journey that you've had over the last many years, and like you said, it's still a process today, this recovery process. Is there one thing that you think of that you really want our listeners to know about, or take away from your story, and bring with them after listening to your pretty damn incredible story
Thank
today?
you. Yeah. I am going to there. There's a lot of things on my mind that I've learned throughout this whole process, but the one thing that sticks out to me is actually a saying. I didn't come up with the saying. I'm a pediatric brain tumor foundation peer-to-peer mentor, and in their training they kind of told me this analogy, and I really love this analogy, and it's the analogy of the storm. So I want you all to imagine a storm and see how it's coming, and it looks dark, it looks doom, it looks gloom, like it looks terrible or whatever, right? And it's coming towards you, and then it goes over you, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen? It causes all this havoc. It destroys things. It causes a lot of commotion, and it's very destructive. And then eventually that storm will pass, and once that storm passes, you get this kind of calmness and peacefulness after it passes. Like after it rains or after there's a storm, there's a
Hmm.
calmness, there's a peacefulness. And you get that. And then also the things that it destroyed, you get to rebuild. But not only do you get to rebuild them back to where they were, but you get to rebuild them better than what they were. You get to rebuild everything. You get all this calm, all this peacefulness, this rebuilding. And it's a beautiful, beautiful time once that storm passes. It's just you get to make yourself into a better person, into a better version of yourself than you were before. And that's what I think is so beautiful. And if you go through life with that mentality of the storm, I feel as though life will become 5 times better.
I
I
think that's really
That was
nice.
beautiful.
Yeah, that was really nice, man. I mean,
Hmm.
listen, we all have our storms. Some are longer than others, but just like the weather, there's always going to be stormy days
Hmm.
that lead to sunny ones. So I
Exactly.
think
Yeah.
that's a really great way to end this. So before we go, I want to thank you very much for coming on. Where can our listeners find you online? If they want to reach out or connect with you.
Yeah, I have a Instagram, a YouTube. I used to have a TikTok, not anymore, unfortunately. But all of that is at Tumor Warrior 67. And then, I also have a website that documents my entire journey. That that'll help you go more in depth into my journey and kind of see what worked for me. So we put that out there. Me and my dad, we put out a website that went through my whole journey just to share what helped me, so it might help other people in the future. I mean, we can't obviously recommend anything in medicine because I'm not a medical
Of
expert,
course.
but we do have that out there, and that is www.tumorwarrior67.com. So everything is basically just Tumor Warrior 67, and you'll find me there.
Awesome, Zach. Thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. It's been a real pleasure, man. Thanks for sharing your story. I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot today. And, I think we'll be able to relate to you. And, some people are scared to tell their story. So people like you are really important. And keep spreading the good word, man, and keep kicking ass.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sounds good. Thank you,
All right.
thank you for having me on.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks for everyone for listening. Until next time, have a good one.